Hello and welcome to the Merle and Locke podcast. I'm Merle.
And I'm Locke.
A set sail and low expectations for everything nerd, accompanied by a healthy, albeit shameful helping of pointless banter, lack of focus, and questionably acquired knowledge. Alright, to start us off, Locke, I was thinking about this the other day. I thought it might bring up interesting conversation. So, I wanted to paint a picture initially, but I don't want to make you feel constricted in possibility. So I'm gonna give you like a general, what's going on. All right. So let's imagine, right? Like the late 1600s, early 1700s, yeah? And it's the golden age of piracy. Yeah?
All right.
Now I was going to say something along the lines of, let's say you're at your local tavern, and on one side of the room there's recruiting for His Majesty's Royal Navy, whatever you want to call it. And then out back, there's recruitment for some kind of pirate crew. All right? Now, I want to know which one would be, if you were to imagine yourself in that situation, which one do you think would be more appealing to you?
And that's taking out of consideration the health problems at the time and the scurvy and all that stuff, right? We're just going to take that off of the table and pretend like it doesn't exist.
Nope. It all exists.
Great.
Yep. Everything. You have to, it's like, this is you in this time frame. You're reasonably healthy, but you just lost your job picking up shit in the streets, and somehow you lost that job. Don't know how, but you have these two options that just presented themselves, and you're trying to figure out you need a lifestyle change, and you say, there's either the Royal Navy I could join up, or I could go be a pirate. You have those two options. You're sophisticated enough to be able to be recruited by the Royal Navy, but there's always pirated. You know, they take anybody. Right. So you have those options. Which one do you choose?
So here's another question for backstory, right?
Okay.
Because it really depends on how I feel towards the Parliament, how I feel toward the Navy at that time.
Okay, sure.
You know, did they do me wrong by any degree? Is there something that they are currently doing that I do not like?
So this is let's say that you're not your average, just put their head down and do what they're told. You're aware enough
Great,
to
so
see.
things have not changed.
Right. Right. So you're personally, your character, you're aware enough to see the disparity between Parliament and your average folk. Yeah.
Right.
So you're aware of it, and you see that, and I mean, sure, it's not fair, but at the same time, you have an opportunity to join the Royal Navy, and if you were to, you could possibly work yourself up in the ranks and become somebody of importance. Become an officer, maybe. I mean, we'll see. I don't know if becoming an officer is something that if it's handed out regularly, or if it's dependent on one of those who you know type things, or the family in which you come from. But but the outlook is, let's just say that the outlook is pretty good, that you could possibly do well in the Royal Navy.
So the other option, because I see a third option. Believe it or not, there's a third option.
Okay, all right. Let's hear your third option.
There is go into it, and when things turn sour, resort to piracy. Because I mean, there were a lot of people, or at least as far as a lot of the stories that say that some of your captains of your pirate ships had been from British Parliament, or
they were officers of the Royal Navy. Yeah.
Yeah, and they eventually just went, yeah, no.
But this is you just starting out. So you're saying that you would probably give the Royal Navy a try, see if it's sustainable, if it's fair, feel it out.
Right.
And if it didn't work out, then you'd resort to piracy.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're
stick it to
you're
the
thinking
man.
that,
Stick it to the man.
so you're thinking that going in, like instantly. You're not
Most
going
likely.
in. You're not going into the Royal Navy thinking, this could change my whole life around. Like I could become someone respectable and this, that, and the other. You're going straight into it. Like
if we're
yeah,
saying that I
let's-
hold the same ideologies as I do now, it's to give it a shot, but knowing that there could potentially be something that happens, something that they do that rubs me the wrong way. I don't think I'm going to be able to stick to what they force upon their people. And they're like, you do as you're told, or else you get thrown in jail. Anything else, you are to be hung out like the wet clothes for the whole world to see. Not the whole world, but you get what I'm saying.
So let's say, are we going to imagine that you are from a perhaps well-off family? Well, I mean, if you're picking up shit in the streets, I suppose you're not from a well-off family. But let's say that you were, right? Now this is a difficult thing to imagine, I think, because if you were brought up in a well-off family, you would be cultured differently. Yeah.
Right.
So you would be led to seeing the world. I don't want to say in an askew way, but it's like, because I mean this is how everyone in society for all time has this is what's happened to them. Like it's all dependent on how you're raised and where you, like, your environment molds you in a way. But let's say you weren't picking up shit on the streets, right? Let's say you were from a well-off family and everything was lined up for you to become an officer of the Royal Navy, like without any like prior qualifications necessarily at all. Like let's say you were educated in seafaring and so on, and you've taken rides on many ships in the past, but now you need to get some work experience. Your father, who's an admiral or something, he tells you, oh, you need some work experience before you captain your own ship, so become an officer on a vessel, and for however many years, and then perhaps you could find a captaincy. So let's say that's the case, right? What are you thinking going into it?
So you're saying that Papa had pretty much given you the keys, not the keys. He had given you the men for the ship and said, here you are, boy. Do well.
No, well, no, you don't have your own ship. You're going
Oh,
into an already captained crew, but as
okay.
an officer, so you have a higher standing within the crew,
Okay.
but you're not captain.
Because I'm also sure that bodes well with everyone else. Uh,
Wow, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Like the disparity between well-off families and the poor folk, as it were.
Because when you're babied like that, and I would even think for a time like that, a time period such as this, where you are basically given a position, how much ridicule is going to be given to you by your fellow peers on this ship.
Now, would they? Do you think they would dare to?
You might get a few, and this really depends on the individual of how they handle it. Do they go
Right.
crying home to daddy about what had just happened, or
Yeah.
do they take matters into their own hands?
Right. Right. And put those lowly scrubbies in their place.
Right.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
put a bullet between their eyes, and then everybody might.
Oh God. I don't think that shit would fly in
No,
the
no,
military, but threatening
Well,
to
it was
maybe
like
maybe that'd be all right.
maybe some corruption at the time where people would be like, all right, yeah, I won't say anything.
Now, do you think that you going into it, do you think you would still have this same outlook, like give it a go for daddy, or
Ugh.
I know that's a hard question to answer because you're not obviously brought up in that kind of environment, so
Right.
you can't say for certain. But how would you handle it? Do you imagine? How do you imagine you would go into it?
Upbringing really has a lot to do with how this outcome would come out.
Yeah.
'Cause I mean, to some degree, you can only see how much your family can help you, but from there, you got to kind of take it on your own.
Sure.
And depending on what's said, what is done, how these people might treat you, it's hard for me not to imagine that I might pick my fights.
Yeah. Now, do you think you could be a hard ass? You know, let's take for example now. Now, I may be this may come off as presumptuous, sure, but I'm willing to wager that you have never been in a seafaring vessel and crewed it, or worked on a ship.
All the time. Now,
Now,
no.
okay, so let's consider that, right?
Uh,
Now let's pretend that you have gotten some kind of education on the processes and how to properly sail a vessel, or at least you know the orders to shout to the crew. They know how to do all the work,
mhm.
but you know all the commands to make it so.
Right.
So let's consider you have that knowledge, right?
Mm.
Now you get onto the ship, and the captain is in his quarters, and he tells you to handle the crew. And you go out there. Let's say there's a storm front coming in, and you need to get the vessel away from the storm, and you start shouting orders at the crew, and they're not listening too well. They don't show any sense of urgency or direct obedience, and they kind of grumble at you and whatnot because you're the new guy, right? They don't know. This is like this is some kid who this is his first time on a ship. Why should we listen to this guy? Now, and you get to the point where one of the crew confronts you, or he puts his foot down, or tells you to step aside, something like that. Like he says something that's patronizing towards you, and shows blatant disrespect in front of all the crew. Now you personally, and you're presented with this confrontation. How do you think you would handle it realistically?
Shoot him where he stands. You turn around to the crew and say, "Any other remarks?" No.
Wow, I didn't know you were so cold. Jeez.
Ah, man, like, it's like even being asked a question of what would you do in a scenario that's just today's day and age. I have a hard time dealing with it until being put in that situation. Like, I might be able to tell you one thing, but I can almost guarantee that being put in the situation, I might react a little differently. I also feel like I've gotten so used to, you watch all these movies, play all these games where they're like, you do cold stuff like that to get everyone's attention. Because they want to know that you're not dicking around. You're not afraid of them, and they need to do as they're told, lest they die.
But let's consider this. You have a flintlock,
Uh-huh.
a muzzle loader,
Right.
a single shot.
Yeah.
You put a bullet into this guy's head. What does the rest of the crew do?
Well, clearly they don't have guns.
They're just gonna be like, okay, we'll do it, we're told.
Right,
or do you
right.
think they're just gonna beat you to death?
I have my sword on the ready.
Yeah, okay. So consider the moment. Realistically, what would you do? Do you thrive in confrontation usually?
Do I thrive in confrontation usually?
Yeah.
Not usually.
Yeah. Okay. So you'll just see red and you'll lose it.
Yeah, I'll just lose it, more
Alright.
than likely. So, before I would even do anything like that, I would have to really think things through.
So
You know?
you think you would preemptively consider this situation happening before it even happened?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean,
Alright.
I feel like going into something like that, you have to think of any and all possible outcomes, even a mutiny, because nothing proves more difficult than trying to captain a ship full of men who, you might have been out there for like a couple of days now without food and water, and they can all lose their grip too.
Well, let's say you're fully supplied and everything. I mean, it's the Royal Navy.
Right.
They're always prepared.
I'm saying
Yeah.
anything can happen at sea.
True. Yeah. True. Do you think? But what people look to for leadership is someone that can hold their composure. Yeah. So
Right.
how would you display your composure in that situation when confronted like that?
I mean, you would have to show no bit of weakness, not even the slightest bit of anger, and quick to pull the trigger, because what that shows the people is that you are already on edge, that you are losing it, and one step closer to eventually killing yourself or killing the crew. So they're going to do what it takes to get you out of there. So you almost have to be completely straight-laced, no emotion in the face, and do what you have to do.
Okay, but let's say that happened, and you obviously don't want to take this man's life, because that would, one, probably get you removed
If
from your position.
Well, if it doesn't cause problems now, it's going to cause problems later.
Sure, sure. But what do you think you would threaten this man with that was going trying to go toe to toe with you?
And getting that person removed from their position might change their tune. Really depends on where that person's at in their life. Now, I feel like going into something like that, you would have to know even their background story too, which, if we're talking Navy, I feel like you have all these men's information. You know their family, you know where they live, you know what kind of situation they're in.
Do you think it would be that personal?
I think it might.
Hmm. Perhaps. Maybe because it was your first crew you were going into, you wanted to make sure you had all information
I know I would.
about these people. Yeah.
But
well, we are in this scenario. It is you, realistically. It is you. Right? So you think if this is your first position, this first crew you've voyaged with, you think you would try to get as much information on the crew as possible.
absolutely.
Okay. Now, what leverage do you think you would use on this man? Let's say you knew the man, his name, his face. You knew he had a wife and two children back home, and he was, I don't know what other information you could possibly get about this man. Maybe you knew, or you heard some rumors within the crew that he was a gambler, and he needed this voyage to be able to pay off some debts. Somehow you knew all this. Let's just say you knew that he needed to pay off some debts and perhaps make some extra money to feed his family. Okay, now what do you think you would say to this man to get him to stand down?
I'd bring up his whole addiction in front of everyone.
Okay. Now, what if everyone knew that he had a gambling addiction? They'd be like, "Oh, that's old news."
Well, I mean, like, bring it up. Say, now how do you think that you're going to keep up your gambling addiction with no position? And how's your family going to feel about it? And say the wife by name, the kid's name.
Okay. So
Really,
you're trying to do a deep dive on this guy's
Woo,
psyche,
buddy.
Okay. No, I like that. Like using some kind of manipulation against a person to. I think that's an effective way to handle things. Absolutely, rather than blunt intimidation. I feel like manipulation could be very effective, especially like in the Navy. I mean, you're a sophisticated lad. You have to keep up appearances. You don't want to start fighting and dirty your nice outfit and stuff. Using your mind to manipulate these lower folk, right? These people are beneath you. You're trying to patronize this man,
Right.
and make him feel little in your presence. I like that. That's good. Now, let's say that you had a severe lack of wit and knowledge on this man. All right. Now, I'm turning it around now. Now, let's say you say
Stupefy me.
Yeah, so stupefy you and say you're not intimidating, and these guys just berate you and make you feel like garbage. Yeah, and they have no respect for you. And the voyage comes to a close. You get back to port. You get off the ship. What is your next move?
Murder the lot of them.
No. I mean, career-wise, are you gonna be like, oh, I need to better myself and earn some respect within this crew and return back to the ship when it's ready to leave port again, or it's gotten its next assignment, or are you gonna say, screw this, I'm not gonna be in the Navy? Because I mean, I don't know how it worked back then. I know there's contracts nowadays. You need to spend
All right.
a certain term in the military, but let's say, for lack of knowledge, I suppose, that you could quit whenever. All right. Do you quit the Navy, or do you think you would try to better yourself
I would
return?
I would devise a plan to make it work. If it doesn't work, and I do resort to violence, then piracy is an option. Because once I resort to violence, obviously now you are going to make yourself a wanted man, which then it's either I be hung as this, or I kind of change my appearance, change my name, and go out on a hunt to get back at all these people. And
Well, I don't know if you would necessarily be hung for, resorting to violence
right,
with
you'd
like some
probably
kind
just
of
be
low
thrown in jail.
privateer. Either that, or like, let's say that your family is of enough importance that your daddy could get you out of trouble, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he could get you out of trouble if you were to do this thing. So your only choice wouldn't be just resort to piracy. Yeah. But
Sure.
but let's say this is your first taste of the Navy, and it was just the worst experience for you, and you were completely torn apart. You were utterly distraught, and your confidence was at an all-time low. And Daddy's disappointed because the captain told him that you're a shitbag, and now your dad he's like, oh, you're no son of mine, right?
Shoot him in the spine.
Okay.
No.
For the rest of this scenario, I'm taking away your gun.
Damn.
No. Your gun is gone. Oh man. No. Okay. So Daddy's disowned you. Okay. He's so disappointed in you, and your older brother, and both your older brother and your younger brother became very successful. They're already captaining their own ships, and your dad's allowing you to live on his property, but not necessarily under his roof. And he ignores you and won't even acknowledge you. You're the middle child. You're the disgrace to the family, and you're having trouble getting a job anywhere. What do you do?
I go captain my own ship. As a pirate, wrecking my brother's ships just to prove that I'm a better sailor and a better captain.
Oh, a revenge story against your family. Okay. Yeah, I like that. All right. Now let's put that, let's make that possible. You have earned some money that you've put aside, and you're able to purchase a ship of your own. Now, how do you get your own crew? What do you go to the let's say not the local tavern. Let's say you because this is a naval town, high class folk. Let's say you go down the coast a bit and you see what possibilities there are. You hit up the tavern. There seem to be some degenerates in that local tavern,
Hmm.
and you need to find crew. And this town is made of fishermen, some former pirates, some farmers, and such. What what promises do you give to get these people on your crew?
Fame and riches. That'll get a lot of people's attention. I mean, the biggest thing is try to find like-minded people. I feel like I would try to find people who are close to like-minded, but also keeping a close eye on them, knowing darn well what might happen, because they're not seeking the same thing that you are. Clearly, if we're talking this as the revenge story that we've just brought into light, they're not going to want that revenge story. They might want the attention from others, but they're not seeking that specific family's attention.
Okay, yeah. So your story is that you're not necessarily looking for riches. You're looking to prove yourself
Uh,
by taking out your brothers, and I guess you can't really take out your father. I don't know. Do
Depends
the
if he
higher?
captains a ship too.
Yeah, true. Now, but we're gonna
You're
say,
saying he's admiral, so he just might captain his own ship.
yeah, yeah. And he captains like a man of war or something like
Well,
that.
yeah, which
Yeah.
is one ship that you would not want to go up against.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So if I were to go up against a man of war, knowing that I would go up against a man of war, I would sabotage it from the get-go. I would want to sabotage that ship before it even set the open seas. You know what I mean?
So do you think that you would want your name to be famous, or would you work under an alias so that no one could truly identify you?
It'd more than likely be an alias,
Okay.
as a
All
way
right.
of also disassociating from that family.
Okay. But in certain circumstances, you would use your real name to be able to get into places. Like if you wanted to sabotage this man of war, let's say.
If I knew it would work.
Okay. All right. How do you think you would sabotage a man of war?
Maybe sabotage the cannons.
It's a lot of cannons.
There's a lot of cannons, but you only need at least the bottom deck, and how many decks are in a man of war?
Is it three? No, is it three?
Is it three? You got the
I don't
very
know.
very
I
bottom,
thought there was, yeah, I thought there was a bottom deck
bottom
and a
deck, and
mid
at
deck and a
least
top
three other
deck.
floors, right?
It's got to be something like
Two
that. I don't
floors
know.
of cannons, and then the top yeah, the your main deck
Yeah.
would be full of cannons as well.
Yeah, I have no idea. So do you think you would just take or sabotage the cannons on a certain side of the man of war, and then when you get into battle with it, you would prioritize getting on that side of the ship?
I mean,
And
I feel I would also get to understand what his strategy would be on the Man of War, and I feel like if you're a member of that family, you technically know their strategies and how they
yeah,
would go about taking down a ship on the Man of War.
right. Do you think you would try to like implant like a stowaway or someone onto the ship, or maybe see if you could get a person from your crew to impersonate a member of that crew and then do some kind of sabotage?
I would choose that route, and I would also choose another one. So between the having people already stowed away or hiding inside their own navy and get, like I said, cannons to be sabotaged, make sure that these people aren't, make sure my people aren't within that radius when the cannons go haywire.
Oh, so you don't want them to make the cannons just simply unable to fire, but you would like them to like do something severe when fired.
Yeah, I want that ship to sink.
Right. Okay.
I
All
want
right.
them to sabotage it to the point that the ship sinks. And I wouldn't make sure that they do it, because God knows, I'll probably plant things on my own and not tell them about it. Because we're talking about a day and age where they could even betray you for whatever reason.
So I do appreciate this. How you would use manipulation to belittle people into respecting you, and
Hmm.
then to earn your crew's trust, you would use. I feel like your cunning alone would get respect of your crew. For like what you're trying to achieve. And if you're able to pull this stuff off, I absolutely think that you could get a very trustworthy crew, or at least have your crew's respect, and so they wouldn't try to take you out and take your ship.
I mean, the other thing that I imagine too is you're saying brothers then. So these brothers are going to try to implant people on my ship as well, right?
Do you think so? Well,
Oh,
they don't
absolutely.
know who you are, right? They only know your
I'm
alias.
I'm sure that they're going to know somewhat. I mean,
Maybe eventually. Sure.
eventually. And when that time comes, they'll be like, oh, what if we try to get some people stowed away on there and get people to come in? And people are going to approach me and be like, yeah, how can I be a member of your ship? I really want to. And they'll try to spruce it up and make it seem like they're badass and that they really want to help out and that they admire me. And you're just going to have to be weary about that.
So I'm imagining now that you've got a plan, you've earned your crew's respect and everything. Let's say you've always gone by this alias, and no one knows your true identity.
Hmm.
Possibly not even your crew, but there's still these seeds of distrust in yourself, where you feel like you can never trust anyone, because
Hmm.
you're always thinking like someone knows, someone's coming after me.
Well,
They're gonna sabotage me.
you gotta be on edge, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you're now a captain of a pirated ship. You have to be
Right, right.
weary.
Yeah. That sounds stressful.
It,
But
yeah, doesn't it?
oh man. And it's all because you got your feelings hurt trying to join the Navy. Thank you for joining us on the Merle and Locke podcast. If you enjoyed this banter, please consider becoming a patron by going to patreon.com/Merle and Locke, or simply follow the link in the description. Thank you.